So hello and welcome to the Gerety Talks. My name is Lucia Ongay and I am the co-founder of the Gerety Awards, a global creative prize that is redefining the standard to which advertising has been traditionally held. Named for Francis Gerety, the copywriter who in 1948 coined the slogan, "A diamond is forever," Gerety Awards marks the first time an international jury has been brought together to select the best in advertising, all advertising and not just advertising made for women through the female lens. Just like the awards, Gerety Talks will put some of the creative industry's true change makers in the spotlight with the aim to drive progress within the industry in a global scale. Today, I'm very happy to have with me Jordan Doucette from Canada. Hi, Jordan. Thanks for joining us. She is the president and partner at No Fixed Address in Toronto, a powerhouse brand builder with communication wizardry as her not-so-secret weapon. Her work has been awarded at Cannes Lions, The One Show, the Clio Awards, etc., etc. If it's shiny and sets off a metal detector, she has probably won it. Jordan's journey has seen triumphant Chief Creative Officer stints at renowned agencies, including Taxi and Publicis Burnett, where she racked up an array of accounts from cars to QSR and CPG to telcos. She continues to push for the positive transformation of advertising in her current home of president and partner at No Fixed Address, a Canadian and US-based shop reinventing the agency model. So thank you for joining us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And congratulations as well, because you were awarded with a silver in the Experience Cat and a bronze in the Work for Good Cat at the Gerety Awards 2020 with your campaign, Lolly, the exhibit nobody wants to talk about, for the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. So let's have a look at the campaign first, and then we can talk about it. Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly,
lolly. Online child pornography is a global epidemic, with a significant presence here in Canada. Yet policymakers and the Canadian public turn a blind eye toward the uncomfortable topic. So how did the Canadian Centre for Child Protection get 125 million impressions in just 4 days? On a paid media budget of $0. By finding a way to make the unspeakable subject matter visible, tangible, and real. 10,824 lollipops, one for each new child pornography image detected every 12 hours. Beautifully displayed for what seemed like another Insta-worthy pop-up, but became much more meaningful when people experienced the disturbing stats, chilling audio of survivor testimonials.
And it took me so long to say it finally did happen.
I wonder if my picture is in their collection.
Even the sickly sweet smell of the lollipops. Reactions ranged from slack-jawed silence to outrage. As thousands of Canadians visited over a weekend in July, that brought in national media.
Tackling a troubling concept.
Each one of these lollipops represents a child.
And the shocking details of what they went through.
Then Toronto Mayor John Tory. Even the New York Times. Attention on the exhibit led to more attention online, where people learned, showed support, and donated to the fight against child pornography. While policymakers and the public were now open-eyed to the epidemic, the truth is, 30 new lollipops have been detected in just the 2 minutes you've been watching this video, making the exhibit no one wants to talk about something we all need to.
So, can you tell us about how you came up with the idea for the campaign?
Yeah, so it's a really dark and horrific topic to talk about. So that's sort of hurdle number one. And it is an issue that not a lot of people come into contact with. So, you know, if you're like me, I've never seen, to just be really transparent, I've never seen pornographic material, you know, sent to me over a platform that I use, like a Facebook or an Instagram, right? And it's happening at a volume that is actually quite shocking. but the fact that it doesn't sort of happen to you personally makes it really difficult for you to have a lot of empathy around it. So we knew that we needed to create awareness around the issue, and so that people didn't see it as like, oh, well, that happens on the horrible, deep, dark interwebs. And even that, I'm like, what is that? Where is that place? How do you get to that place, right? So people were like not confronted with the issue in the way that we see, some other problems that are very, on our streets, or, in the case of illnesses, like maybe someone who's experienced it. So this is a very horrific topic, but it's just not experienced by people. And so we needed to do something to create awareness, but also not in a way that, would shock people into just closing their eyes, which is kind of a pretty natural reaction when you hear about some of the things that are happening on the internet. So the creative team was doing some research, and they realized that these predators refer to their victims, children, as lollipops. And the language around that was like, get a lollipop, I have a lollipop. And so we're like, oh my God, it's so incredibly shocking that we use such, childlike language. It's a reference to a treat that a kid likes by these predators. And so we knew that that is a really motivating way into the problem, which led us to the idea of setting up an exhibition. And even, there's just this little nuance of like the day that it went live was like really hot. And so the sticky sweet lollipops had this scent to them. And so again, it's like these two worlds coming together, right? This like sweet, charming, colorful, bright world. And then you quickly realize that, that is the language that predators are using around luring children and sharing inappropriate content.
And did you have any feedback from the people visiting the exhibition, or a way of knowing what they felt? And
yeah, I mean, it was, tears and shock and outrage. We actually had a lot of survivors come through who gave us the feedback that they felt heard, but not in a way that was traumatic for them. And so we felt like we landed the tone like quite well, that it wasn't so overwhelming that you didn't want to think about the issue further. We drove people to a website, people could donate. And so there also felt like there was an outlet of, what more can I do now that I know that this issue exists?
Okay. And there was another campaign from No Fixed Address that was shortlisted as well at Gerety 2020, Sick Kids for Airbnb. So let's have a look at this campaign as well, and then we can talk about it.
It's very hard to imagine that the conditions for parents and patients at a place like Sick Kids are like this.
Sick Kids is doing this really cool thing. They're partnering with Airbnb
to highlight the need for new facilities at the hospital.
It's offering the public an intimate view of what it's like and why they're trying to build a brand new one.
The hope is that by having people come here and spend a few hours, they will see just how desperately this new hospital needs to be built.
To deliver a truly authentic experience, we created an exact replica of the pediatric intensive care unit down to the last detail. We worked with doctors and families to design an immersive audio and live experience to take guests behind the curtain. Our first guests, including NBA champion Fred VanVleet, witnessed the sights, sounds, and emotions firsthand.
I don't feel a pulse. I'm starting CPR. So please forgive the break.
We're here for 3 hours. I can't imagine being here for a day, 3 days, 3 months.
Still no pulse.
Our other guests were quick to spread the word too.
This is the first time I've had a moment to kind of take in. Sorry, guys.
It didn't take long for the story to gain international attention. It was so successful that what was supposed to be a 2-week installation is now being kept up permanently for simulation and training. Best of all, people everywhere began to understand the pressing need for the new Sick Kids.
Anyone who experiences this Airbnb will see that the staff and the level of support is amazing, but they definitely will leave here knowing that there needs to be a change.
So can you tell us about how this idea came to life?
Yeah, so Sick Kids is a amazing hospital here in downtown Toronto, and they are so well known, and they did a brilliant campaign. I'm sure the people watching this will have seen it. It was called Versus, an incredibly powerful, disruptive work that has been, really well awarded. And it had been in market for a while. And part of the issue is it was almost so good that people assumed that the hospital didn't need real help anymore. And so they have a dream of building a new facility because the current one just doesn't have all of the things that the hospital needs to do its job well. And so we were sort of up against perception that the hospital, was generating money and was doing pretty well, when in reality, some of the facilities were in dire straits. And so that led us to talking about, well, how do you change perception that there is a real need? And we realized that, like, sometimes people just have to experience it for themselves. And then you're like, oh my God, it's totally unacceptable, which it was. So that led to the idea of partnering with Airbnb and allowing people to book a room, which is really just a space in the NICU unit, to experience exactly what happens for families who are in that situation. And so the room we created wasn't in the actual NICU, obviously, but it was in a wing that was not being used, and it was created to a T. So in the video, you can see like the red lines on the floor, which is the actual amount of space that a family has to be with their sick child. And they are, there's barely enough room for the equipment and then another family. So you can imagine, like, if your kid is getting bad news or no one has slept, like, you're all in this room, and the sounds and the sights are just not an environment that will foster health. And so people could come in and experience it for themselves, which very much, puts a renewed focus on getting donations.
And I imagine you had to get like a special permit from the hospital. Was it easy to get that?
Well, because we were using a room that was sort of adjacent to, it was like in another wing that wasn't being used, it really wasn't a big deal, which is amazing. And again, like, incredibly brave clients.
Yes. And when you have a look at the NFAS website, your company right now, what would you do if you weren't afraid is the first thing you read. You change jobs in the middle of a pandemic. Were you afraid to make this decision? Do you think the context makes you more courageous, or not necessarily?
Do you know what? I actually decided to change jobs before COVID.
Okay.
We had plans on coming home, and that decision was very hard. And what you'll find and what you kind of have to advocate for yourself is like your own happiness. And I loved my experience in Chicago, and some personal reasons kind of made me, revisit being there. And so it's tough. It's tough to leave something that you love. But I had my eye and a good relationship with the team that had started NFA, and I had always admired them. So I was like, hey, if I have to make a really hard decision, I want to go to something that I feel like can be sort of my next giant career move. And I'm really glad. The scary part was, having resigned, but still living in the US, and then COVID hit, and sort of nobody knew what was up, was probably the scariest moment in my career. There was a couple of weeks where I'm like, oh my God, will it all implode? And where will we live? And what's going to happen? But everything's pretty good now.
Did you have to change your plans, like move later, or not really because of the pandemic?
We moved sooner. So the plan had been my husband and my daughter would stay in Chicago, and she would finish school, and I would kind of go back and forth and start my new role. We were going to take our time finding a house, all of that good stuff. And then it literally was like, the Canadian government was like, get in the car and come home. So we did, which was good. I feel so lucky that we just, in the movie when there's like the tornado chasing the people and they don't know, I kind of felt like that was us. We were like, what's happening? Something feels off. And then we landed, we got a house, we were quarantining, and I started my new job. So I've only ever, for the most part, met most people from the waist up.
Yeah. And I also read in your bio, this champion of progress continues to push for the positive transformation of advertising in her current home of president and partner at No Fixed Address, a Canadian and US-based shop reinventing the agency model. How are you reinventing the agency model?
We put all of our energy and focus on the people and none of the distracting stuff. And so we are very flat and we chase talent, you know, so Greg Hahn recently joined the NFA offshoot called Mischief because he was a brilliant talent. So we didn't have plans to open up in the US until we decided to partner with him. And, you know, he's doing amazing work, which is getting us more and more clients. And so we're like, hey, there's a lot of distractors in our industry. And we're like, what if you just remove those and focus our energy on people? And when I started at NFA in the midst of the pandemic, one of the things they were really honest about was, hey, like times are harder and we don't know what's going to happen to, you know, our business. But the last thing we want to touch is our people. And so we were going to find money and efficiencies in every corner before we touch our people. And they've lived that in a way that, I don't know, it just, to me, is like a renewed focus on the thing that matters most, which is the humanity in our business.
Okay. And what projects are you working on that you would like to tell us about, if you can?
Yeah, I'm super excited. We literally just did it. It was for Aura. So Aura is a ring that gives you all of your like health stats. And within 4 days, when the election debacle was happening in the US, they can track sort of the sleep pattern changes in the American people who have an Aura ring. And so we did a calculation of how much sleep had been lost and how high anxiety was because of the election results. And we put up a Times Square billboard using that data. So it sort of reflects the amount of hours of lost sleep while this is all happening in the US. So it was just an amazing use of data and, you know, from idea to the board being up in Times Square was like 4 days. So cool.
Okay. And you have a degree in sociology. Has it helped in your career in advertising? And if it has...
Only in the sense that I knew that I was like, I don't know what job I'm going to get with a sociology degree. I better do something else. And so I went to a copywriting class, and that's kind of what kicked it off. So I would say not really. Maybe the only thing I took away from it is empathy, you know, just like really looking at humanity and what motivates people, and then making sure that, you know, we don't lose focus of that in the work that we're doing.
And which campaigns have you been most excited by recently, and why? Or do you have any favorites maybe among the Gerety 2020 winners that are not yours?
I love Eva's stories. It's so powerful. It's so well done. It just reframes an issue in a way that I've never seen before. I love Tampon book. I reference that everywhere I go. I think that, again, like just finding, it's like we all know it's a problem, but the people who like reframe that problem in a way that just makes you see the world differently is the thing that inspires me the most. And I also love Moldy Whopper because I just appreciate clients who do things that like nobody else would do. And it has such a powerful message behind it, but done in a way that I would, like most clients would be like, we're never going to do it. And I applauded them for doing it.
And how does the industry need to adapt to changes happening today after such a special 2020? What do you think?
The biggest thing for me is, again, just like putting humanity first and thinking about empathy. And we spend a lot of time talking to our teams and realizing like everyone has had such a different experience and that there's not one solve for all of those people. And so just making sure that you're so conscious of like what different people might need at any given time. And we've talked a lot about inclusion and diversity and how as an industry, we have not done a very good job of that, and how COVID, I think one of the silver linings, it's forced us to look at that issue. You know, I think before we would talk about it and then you would get busy in your life and you just would not really create meaningful change. I think COVID was like, you will sit here and you will have to face it and do something about it. And so we're definitely having the hard conversations. And I think it's shifting this thought around people having to fit into an agency culture versus, what they're going to bring to the culture and make the culture richer. And so with that lens, I feel really excited about the work of the future because we're being more inclusive of the brains that are creating it.
And talking about the works of the future, what type of campaigns or topics would you like to see rewarded in the coming creative festivals?
You know what? I think COVID, I don't know about you, but it's like shit got real. Like people thinking about dying from a disease they can't control, to me says like, I don't know, there's just this like realness in the world right now. And so I think the work that people are doing has to like mean something. And I don't mean something as in it has to be like CSR. I just mean like, be thoughtful in what you're putting out in the world. And it can be something super funny. I think the world like kind of wants to have a laugh right now, or it can be something that like changes a problem or illuminates a problem. But I think you have to do things that have like humanity at the center and like offer something up to people, because I feel like we've had a year of it just has taken from you. There hasn't been a lot to like fill up your happy bucket, but there's been a lot to take from it. And so I feel like the work we do has to fill people up in a way, and it can still have range. I wouldn't want to see everything be, sadvertising and, yeah. And I don't want to see a case film that says in these unprecedented times.
Yes.
But I do think like just being more thoughtful about the kind of work we're putting out there is really important.
And to end up, if you would have to summarize 2020 with a word, what would that word be? And what word would you like to represent your 2021?
I would say 2020, the word would be raw.
Raw.
Yeah. I think we all feel a little raw and like it all just hit too close to home, and it's all felt incredibly real and transparent. And all of the things that 2020 has revealed have kind of been raw for me. And 2021, I would say like humaner, just keeping it to one word, I would say, I feel more human. I think my agency feels more human. I hope that the work we put out puts the consumer more at the center and thinks about what it is that like people might want and need. And I think, increasing the diversity in our industry is going to make it feel more inclusive, and the work will just be that much better.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us for this edition of the Gerety Talks. And thanks for your time and all your insights, and the best of luck in your agency.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.